Welcome, my beautiful forest therapy practitioners, and we are on to this next wonderful lesson that really steps us into the secret structure of an inner harmony forest therapy session. Now, there's a lot of great forest therapy practices out there, and one of the books I know that you have is, oops, hold it so you can see it, is Clifford Amos's, or Amos Clifford, I always say his name backwards, book on Your Guide to Forest Therapy. But there's a lot of different books out there that give this basic recipe for how to do a forest therapy practice. But I would say I add a few other bits to my practice that I teach you all to do because of the various different research studies that have been out there. And so the forest therapy structure that I'm going to be teaching you this week is one that is designed to be, I'll call it time efficient, because everybody seems to be worried about how much time does something take, and also to incorporate all of the best practices within a forest therapy session so that people can get the most out of it. So I have my little note, and then I have my little note of what we're going to talk about, and then I have my book here in front of me so that I can make sure we talk about all those things. And what I might have to do is put my glasses on so I can see everything. Before we launch into it, let me though share the resources for this week so that you can see the different resources that you'll have to make it a little bit easier. So. So website, where is the website? Oh my goodness. There it is. Okay. Okay, so on our website for this week, it will have this beautiful, you can either think of it as sunrise or sunset picture, and then it goes on to week 2, and then it will have, it will give you these little links to the forest therapy experience outline for your homework, and then an inner harmony forest therapy outline. You're like, that sounds like the same thing, and it somewhat is. Okay, that's because this week you're going to have 2 homework assignments. So you're going to read the section of the book for this week. You're going to listen to the audio that we have down here below. So here's the new section of the book. Here's the audio for this week. But the theme is going to be, you are going to listen. One of those audios is a downloadable, or you can just listen to it on your phone if your phone gets cell service wherever you're going to be. Guided journey by me to take you step by step through a forest therapy session. So I will be guiding you, even though I will be on a recording, and you will be in your own nature place of choice, but it takes you through these various steps. Then the next part of the homework is, once you've been through that experience, you're going to create your own using this recipe of this structure I'm going to be talking to you about. And then you're going to lead yourself on that. Or if you already have volunteers who want to go on a forest therapy session, take them, right? And practice how you might lead somebody through it. You don't have to take anybody else, so don't get panicked like, oh my God, on my first one, I have to take somebody. You don't. But it can be fun to take a family member or a friend just to see kind of their reaction to the experience. And it also gives you an idea of what you might do differently next time. Okay, so I will be sending the link for this week 2 page, or if you are using the website from the link I sent previously, it's right here under week 2. So, forest therapy structure. Some of this might seem really obvious, but I put it in the structure because sometimes we get so excited about it, people just show up and they're like, well, let's go off to that tree over there, right? We do want a little bit of structure. So the first piece is when you're holding a forest therapy session for other people, you definitely want to have some time built in that is welcoming them to the session, and then preparing them for what's going to happen, right? Maybe give them an idea of how far we're going to be walking, how long, what time we're going to finish up. If there's any additional things that you might look at them and you're like, they are not dressed appropriately for what we're going to be doing today, right? It might be like, you might want to put some shoes on, or you might want to have, something. Did you have anything different that you might bring along with you? It seems a little crazy, and I put it down to people are so disconnected to nature that I have had younger people show up for forest therapy sessions dressed in clothing not appropriate to the weather, right? It's maybe 50 degrees outside, which 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which is kind of chilly, right? It's not hot. And they're showing up in flip-flops and shorts. And I'm thinking they're not appropriately dressed. They're not going to have a good time for an hour and a half outside. And here's the thing, they don't ever spend an hour and a half outside, right? So they don't even think about it, which is why ahead of time, I always have people sign up ahead of time and I send them what they should wear, right? And if they still show up dressed inappropriately, I might say, gosh, you might be a little chilly. Do you have a pair of pants you can put on in the car, right? Like, or do you have a full pair of enclosed shoes? So I remind them. I don't want to say nag them, but I remind them. Then the other things are just preparing in terms of like, there's the restroom over there, before we start out, because we're going to be out for an hour and a half. If you feel like you need to go, now would be the time, right? Just all of those little reminder things. It's also the time to tell them about cell phones and how we want them to either turn their cell phone off or put it in airplane mode so that it's not buzzing and not only disturbing the rest of the group, but disturbing them, right? We don't even want it on vibrate so that they get taken out of enjoying the moment, right? We want that phone to not be in connection with the outside world. You, as the practitioner, you're going to have your cell phone on and ready to go in case of an emergency, in case you need it. You're not going to, but you're the exception to the rule, right? The other thing we want to share with people is about the no talking rule, right? And this can be a big shock to some people because they might think that the whole experience is about they're going to look at this, look at that, da, 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 or they came with their friend and then they and their friend were going to catch up on some gossip while they were out walking in nature. So right up front, I just explained that this is a no talking time, and there will be times which we call circle sharing, where they get to share about what they've just experienced. But the rest of the time is really not about talking to other people. It is any conversation they're having, they can have it telepathically with the trees, with the plants, with the animals. They don't need to speak it out loud. So sharing those kind of ground rules up front is a part of this welcoming. Then once we have everybody up to speed and ready to roll and cell phones and have their gear, and part of this gear might also be, do they need to have a water bottle? Do they need to have something that they're going to carry with them to sit on, right? And so you'll have thought through all of those things ahead of time so that everybody has what they need. It should not be you carrying everybody's stuff, okay? I've had people try to do that, and it's just, it's so hard on the practitioner to lead something when they're carrying things for everybody else. So during that welcome, hand things out that you want them to have for their practice. So once we have that, then the next piece is the Qigong or the energy work that we're going to start with. Now, the term Qigong, Qi means energy, and Gung or Kung means study or practice. Like if you've heard the term, I'm sure you have, of Gung Fu or Kung Fu, right? That Gung or Kung means fighting, or Gung means, sorry, study, and the Fu part means fighting. So whenever you've heard of Gung Fu, that's the study of fighting. Well, Qigong is the study of energy, working with energy, practicing with energy. So in that sense, Qigong encompasses a lot of different practices. So I'm a certified medical Qigong practitioner, which means I've studied to work with people and lead them through exercises that are ancient Chinese Taoist tradition exercises. But yoga works with our energy. So if you have done yoga, right, there could be yoga practices. But anything where we're moving our body and with consciously, I will say, really thinking about how we're moving our body and working with breath, we are working with this energy. So it can be as simple as having people really stretch with intention, right? And in the later lessons, we'll go more in depth with some specific Qigong practices that I teach people that you can learn, but it could be as simple as bringing your arms up in a big circle while you breathe in, and then breath out, bringing them down in prayer position in front of their heart, right? You might have them stand while they're doing that with their feet as wide as their shoulders, so that we're beginning to stretch those muscles in their legs, right? We're beginning to stretch and getting blood flow in their arms, and we're slowing down their breath. So we're having them think about their breath. We're having them thinking about their body. And then we might even, depending on the fitness level of people, as they come down with their hands in front, maybe even bending their knees and squatting a little bit as they come down. So their whole body is beginning to move. We're beginning to work with those muscles in our legs, as well as our arms. And so it's a physical warm-up. And again, force therapy is not an aggressive physical practice like hiking up a mountain. But it is, if somebody's really not used to walking around on an uneven surface, it could be a little bit strenuous for them. So by taking this time to do a very gentle warm up to get the qi flowing, to get the blood flowing, would be great. A piece that I love in an energy practice, a qigong practice, is also what we call purgation. Okay. And for any of you who have studied any energy work, what happens is our emotions, our worries, our problems can get stuck in the energy channels within our body. And that's why people have Reiki or Qigong or different things done, or get their chakras cleared, right? It's because our emotions hold this like litter, like garbage in our body, right? It gets stuck in there. And so what happens is our energy isn't flowing freely. And so one of the things that we can ask people to do in this warm-up is imagining that anything that has been bothering them, anything that has been on their mind, anything that has been hurtful for them, that we're just releasing it right now. And even if they don't believe in this energy blockage within their body from their emotions, we're going to invite them to imagine. You can say, I want you to imagine that your frustration that the boss caused you this week by dumping a last minute project on you, and you had to work late and miss things, and you're really angry about that, we're just going to let it go, right? And so there can be a variety of different processes, ways that we can let that go. And again, I'll show more of them in the Qigong week, but one that's very simple is, it's called slap sides. And I don't think I have enough room here to do it, but we'll see how it goes. I'm going to back up a little bit. Okay. And you've probably seen this, but it's where you just twist your body and you're taking your hands and you're just slapping the sides. I can't twist as much. Let me see if I can do it without my chair. Okay, let's see if I can kind of crouch and do it. Okay, so you kind of get the sense, and let people really, really swing those arms. Now, we don't want them to bruise themselves, right? It doesn't have to be that aggressive, but imagine that as they are twisting and as they are slapping, they are just shaking everything out, releasing everything that they have stuck in them. It truly does work. What we're doing is we're energizing all of those meridians within our body and starts to get that energy flowing. So again, we'll talk more about different Qigong in a later week, but as you are doing your own practice this week, right? And think about what energy practices you already know that work with your body, and then to get warm your body up, to get your breath and your body in conjunction. And then what you know already is a way to like shake things off. One practice I did with a bunch of kids, okay, and it was kind of a forest fairy nature walk, right? And so it was younger kids and it was mostly girls, and there's that, I think, Taylor Swift Shake It Off song, right? And so we just shook it off, right? Shake it off what you're mad about, shake it off what you're sad about, right? And so it doesn't have to be super serious. It can be something fun like that you can incorporate in. So once we've warmed up their bodies and once we've kind of shaken off or released these burdens, then we're ready to step into nature. And we make it a ceremony. And of course, if you're leading this with a group of people who are very connected to energy work and have that belief, you're going to hold this ceremony one way. And if you're working with people that like don't go out in nature, don't believe in fairies, and may or may not always be here because they believe in it, or if it's because their employer hosted this event and everybody's there, right? You're going to have different ceremony. So let me talk about the range in this. What we want people to think about is that we are stepping into the home of the beings that live in nature. So it's the home to the birds, to the squirrels, to the raccoons, to the ants, to the butterflies. We are stepping into their home. And just like we would go to visit a friend, when we go to the friend's house, the polite thing is we announce ourselves, right? Maybe you're a friend that it's a friend that you just like family and you just walk in the door. But most of the time, we announce ourselves. We knock at the door, we ring the bell, and then they welcome us and they greet us and we say, oh, thank you for having us here. And we step through the door, right? There is that greeting. The friend answers the door and we step through. We want to have that same kind of experience. We want to have that same kind of acknowledgement that we are stepping into this home of our friends, our nature friends. And so sometimes you might be at a park or at a place that has a gate that you can symbolically use as we step through this gate, we are stepping into nature and to our friends, meeting our friends there. And a lot of times, though, there isn't going to be any specific archway or gate. So what I encourage everybody to have is like a long walking stick, that you can lay down on the ground. And when people step over this stick, that's going to be like walking through that doorway or that threshold into nature. If you don't have a walking stick, that's okay. Another thing that's really easy to use is a ribbon, okay? And placing a ribbon down, easy to carry, lightweight, that is going to be our threshold into nature. And so as you lay that down and you're talking to the group of people who are not your airy fairy people, you're going to say, I'm putting this down so symbolically, I want you to think about releasing all those worries and cares that you have in our human being world, because those don't matter in the realm of nature. And that as I step over this threshold, I'm going to use this feather and I'm going to imagine that I'm wiping away all my worries and cares. Okay. And so I will use a little feather wand, right, to just symbolically do that for myself. And then I will say out loud, I'm like, thank you, nature, for welcoming me in today. And I will step across. It's not a big deal. They still might think, girl's a little wacky, but hey, that's why I'm there, right? I'm there to lead them on this experience. And then as they step up to the threshold, I will use the feather to say, I want you to think about what you're releasing. You don't need to tell me about it, but we're just imagining this feather helps you release all that, and you can pick it up on your way home, right? So once I clear them, then I invite them to either out loud or to themselves say hello to their friends in nature, right? Most of the time, the group that is not fully connecting with the energy of nature, they don't say anything. But I will ask them that whenever you're done saying that, just nod your head. So I'll wait for them to nod their head and step across. So that is how we can help that group step into that entry of nature. Now, if you're leading a group of people who love the realm of energy and already talk to trees and that group, you can make this piece of the clearing of their energy and stepping into that even more ceremonial. But for a group that's not ready for that, this is still going to be a departure, but it's still going to be very clear that they are going to step into a different experience. Okay. Once we've done that, then we're taking that step to really what I call activate all the senses. And when we have people tune into their senses and get out of their head, and definitely they're not connected to their device anymore, right? They're not just looking here, but connecting to their senses. That's where they can really start to enjoy the rest of the forest therapy session. Now, activating their senses means that you're going to be leading them on a little bit of a guided journey, just like you're going to listen to me lead you on that guided journey. You're going to lead them on this experiential sensation journey. Now, they don't have to close their eyes. They don't have to lay down, right? We're actually going to either take the group to like one tree that they're all standing around, that you know that this tree is safe to touch, right? It's something that you've scoped out ahead of time. Or if it's an area, you can keep them in a small area so they can hear your voice. You don't want somebody heading across the field. You want to keep them kind of contained to this small area and have them experiencing first looking at this plant, right? It doesn't have to be a tree if you don't have trees. Maybe it's a beautiful shrub. Maybe there's a little place where flowers are growing, and you're having everybody connect with this plant. And the first thing we want them to notice is what they see. What shapes, what colors, what textures do they see? And then noticing, how does it make them feel? Now, we're not asking them to tell us out loud. We're just leading them through this sense of seeing and noticing how it makes them feel. And then we might ask them to reach out and touch the plant And notice, how does it feel? Is it warm or cool? Is it soft? Is it rough? Is it dry? Is it moist? How does it make you feel? Do you notice any sensations in your body when you touch this plant? Now you can release the plant now, and I want you to breathe in, and I want you to notice, how does the air feel? All of these words are in your workbook, so don't worry about, oh my God, how am I going to remember all these words? They're all in your workbook, right? But as we lead people through seeing and touching and breathing in, we're going to ask them to notice what they hear. And then we're even going to ask them to breathe in with their mouth open. And notice, as they breathe in, what would it taste like here, right? What would the air taste like, right? We're invoking all of these senses. And then even asking them as they stand there to notice what gravity feels like on their body, right? Just standing here, notice, how do my arms feel, right? Do I notice them pulling down? How does my body feel in connection to the ground beneath my feet? How does it make my feet feel? Do I have my weight even on my feet? And then inviting them to close their eyes. And at this point, if you ask people to close their eyes right away, they might get nervous because it's a new place, it's a new thing, but they've had all this time to now really use all their senses to take things in. So now when we get to close your eyes, now we're going to invite them to use their imagination. We're going to say, with your eyes closed, if you could sense this plant, if you could imagine what the energy was coming from this plant, what would it feel like? Does it feel happy? Does it feel vibrant? If you could sense it, how far down, imagine how far down its roots go into the ground, and imagining what it feels like when it reaches up into the sky. And what other creatures or what other things are you aware of? If in your imagination that you could imagine sensing right now, maybe you're imagining how the wind is blowing or what the clouds are like with your eyes closed. And there's no right or wrong. We're just using our sense of imagination, right, to connect to energy. And so once we've done this exercise, and in the book, it even takes it a little further. And in the exercise lesson that I have for you all, it takes a little further to connect with a tree from your childhood, and in your imagination, going to that tree and talking to that tree and experiencing that tree again. So this is all a piece of just activating the physical senses and then activating the imagination, opening their world up. And even if they don't believe in energy, we're just asking them to imagine. Once we finish that piece, the next step in the structure is giving people a chance to share about it. Because a lot of people, it doesn't validate their experience until they get to share a little bit about it. So that's what we call circle sharing. So at this point is when we invite people to stand in a circle, and it is important to have them come back together and be in a circle. A circle is a very ancient shape, and energy flows around a circle or a spiral. And so by bringing people into a circle, we're actually then we've brought them into this state of being aware of everything around, and now we create a circle that makes that awareness, that energy of awareness, even stronger because it flows around the circle. One of the things we'll ask people now in circle sharing is we'll go around one by one, and we don't want this to take a long time, maybe 5 minutes total at most. So depending on how many people you have there, they might only share one sentence, right, about what they experienced. And it's not up to us to coach them, counsel them, judge them, give them more information. Everybody else's responsibility is just to listen to their experience and then thank them for sharing. Most groups that you have will probably be super respectful with this. But if you are thinking that you might have a group that isn't used to allowing one person to talk, and without them having something else they need to share about it, you might use a tool called a talking stick. And this is from a Native American tradition. And what it means is the person holding the stick is the person who gets to talk. And then the stick gets passed around the circle one by one, and that signifies who is doing the talking. It can be a phenomenal fun craft project if you like those kinds of things, to create your talking stick to use at your sessions. And so it can be any kind of stick. If you could go to a craft store and buy just a wooden dowel, but you've all scoped out your forest therapy places. And so you might find a stick from a tree that you could use. And you probably don't want it to be more than like a foot long, just because it gets awkward to carry. So think about having to carry it or put it in your backpack. But then you can decorate it any way you want, right? And you might decorate it with symbolism that represents that this is a talking stick. So sometimes what you might think of is talking is our throat chakra, right? Our throat chakra is about communication. It can be about truth. And our throat chakra is associated with the color blue. So you might use blue ribbons on the stick, or you might paint part of the stick blue. You might even decorate it with things from nature, like feathers, or my favorite, crystals, right? So you might look at, so what are some crystals that have to do with communication? And there are a lot of light blue colored or blue, like turquoise colored crystals that you might place on there that signify that this is about truthful communication. Of course, you can make your talking stick look like anything you want, but those are some ideas. And then in this circle sharing, you're the person who has to, if somebody starts sharing a lot longer, right, you might be the one to say, all right, we're going to need to move on, but thank you very much for sharing, right? So you're the, I don't want to call it the referee, but you're the timekeeper, right? You're the one who keeps things flowing. But it is important to allow people to share. And you might just say, in one sentence, tell me how you feel, right? Or tell me how that experience made you feel. And as they move the stick around and they share, all we need to do is acknowledge it and say thank you, or thank you for sharing. Or if you're using a talking stick, you might want to use a Native American expression that is just ho, okay? And that ho doesn't mean yes, it means I hear you, right? And it doesn't mean that you have to agree. And it just means I hear you. So you might explain to people that everybody in the circle could say ho, to say I hear you. So circle sharing. Then we are ready for another important piece of the structure. And another piece that you can weave in at different places, but I generally, this is how I do it next, is we're going to do some conscious walking. Now, conscious walking, what does that mean? It means that not just our normal, I'm going from point A to point B. It means that we are going to be very conscious of every step we take. What is underneath our feet? What does the ground feel like underneath my foot at this time? And even if people have on shoes that they can't feel the ground, is to imagine and acknowledge what it is I'm stepping on, right? Am I stepping on a flower? Maybe it's like saying, I'm sorry, flower. I'm sorry that you have to bear my weight at this time, right? Or I'm sorry, grass, right? And it's not like we have to walk through the whole thing being apologetic, but it does mean we want to think about each step and how we're interacting with all of those beings. As we step, we're also listening. What do we hear? And if people hear a sound, we encourage them to stop, look, notice, where does that sound come from? Did they hear a bird? Then notice, stop, look for the bird. Thinking about how human beings evolved, we were conscious walking all the time, right? We were very aware of what we were stepping on. We were very aware of what birds were communicating, because if they were sharing a danger signal to each other, is that something I need to be aware of, right? It's also noticing, is there a change in the wind? Like, did you feel a breeze? Noticing where that breeze comes from. And maybe looking up, is there a storm moving in? What do I see in the sky? What do the clouds look like? Noticing, if with that breeze, what does it smell like? What scent is being brought my way? And so every piece of this conscious walking, we are gathering information with all of our senses, right? We activated the senses, and now we are walking and being aware with every step of what we notice. When you plan your forest therapy session and you're asking them to conscious walk from one location to the next, you want to make sure that they can do it within 10 minutes. Okay. You might think, oh, I need to go down 100 yards. I'm pretty sure they're not going to make it in 10 minutes. And what happens is after 10 minutes, people kind of tune out, right? They start thinking about, oh, I wonder what I'm going to get to eat after this forest therapy session, right? They start to like not be as tuned in to noticing the nature piece. So use that conscious walking as a way to get from one place to the other, but make sure your next location is within a 10-minute conscious walk. It can be shorter than that, but you don't want it to be longer than that. And then again, once everybody gets to your new location, you might ask them to gather in a circle and have another circle share of what they experienced when they were conscious walking. The next piece is what maybe the meat of the whole session is, right? In terms of what we call a forest therapy practice, or sometimes it's called an invitation. And if you've been reading the forest therapy guidebook, your guide to forest therapy, it's referred to as invitations there. And this is where you're going to spend 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes really connecting in some way with nature. And there's so many of these different practices. For you choosing your own, creating your own forest therapy session this week, you're going to want to look through your forest bathing book and choose something from the invitations in this book. There are a lot of different ones. There's ones you can do around water. There's ones you can do in the woods. There's ones you can do out in a meadow. So choose one that resonates with you for this week as the one you're going to do. After this session, this invitation, again, it's a great time to bring people together and have a circle sharing. Now, for yourself, you're like thinking, well, it's just me. I don't need a circle sharing. Oh, what I'm going to encourage you to do, doing it yourself, is have a little journal book and take a moment to write down your own personal observation. So after the sensory experience and it's just you, instead of a circle sharing with a group, you're going to write down what you experienced. After your conscious walking, you're going to write down what you experienced. So that way you are getting to express and consolidate in that sense of what you experienced. The same way with this practice or this invitation, again, writing it down for yourself, or if you're leading your little group, have them each share something about that experience. Now, depending on how long you're making your forest therapy experience, you could do another conscious walking session. You could do another invitation. But the next piece that I want you to really think about in that invitation or that experience is what we call a sit spot. And it's where we're going to incorporate our earthing. Now, if you've started reading the other book that one of the other books that I have as recommended reading, and that's the Clint Ober book on earthing. Earthing is that practice that when we connect physically to the earth, that the electromagnetic energy that runs through the earth is one that is at a very specific healing level for the human body. And so a sit spot means that people don't have to be focused on where they're walking. And it's more about they're going to sit in one specific place and focus on the earthing aspect. Now, they might be still looking at a tree and having communication with the tree, or watching the clouds and what messages do I see in the clouds, right? It could be any one of those things, but the key is this is where we're going to have them plug into the earth. And so there's a couple different ways we can do that. And one of them that probably most familiar with people is bare feet. Okay. And you might be asking me, LuAnn, why can't they just all be in their bare feet the whole time we're doing forest therapy, and therefore they're earthing the whole time? And my answer to that is, unless you really know that there is nothing dangerous for people to step on, it's probably not a great idea for them to be in their bare feet the whole time, right? If it's in your own backyard, I'm going to say you probably have a very good idea of what could be dangerous back there, and you probably don't have anything really dangerous laying around that they might step on. But if you're in a public place, you actually don't know what could be there. And so in a sit spot, what it means is you can have them now take off their shoes and really look at the ground that they're going to put their feet on and make sure that there's nothing dangerous right there. And that danger could be litter of some kind, and it also could be the plants that are there. It also could be checking it out and make sure they're not putting their foot on top of an anthill, right? So just making sure that where they're going to put their feet, if they're going to put bare feet down, that they are connected to the earth and not anything dangerous. Some people don't like to have bare feet for a number of reasons. Some people don't want their, like how their feet look, right? And so they're like, I'm not getting my feet out. Okay, so socks. Can they have socks on? Yes, if the socks are thin and if you moisten the bottom so that that electrical current can conduct. So some people just have sweaty feet and their socks will be moist. And if not, if you have a spray bottle with your anti-bug spray that you've used, maybe they're going to spray the bottoms of their socks so that that can connect. But some people aren't even going to take their shoes off, right? They're not going there. That's okay. If we're having people sit on the ground, if they put their hands on the ground, and again, looking at where their hands are going to be, then they're connected, right? There's a book, let me grab it here. It is by Laura, whoops, hold it up so you can see it. Oh, there we go. Laura Conover, okay? And it's called The Earth Prescription. And she's an MD. And one of the points that she makes in her book is that we tend to think of like, oh, you got to have all your feet on the ground, or people will take, want to lay their body down in the grass and really connect with the earth. And those things are fabulous. But here's the thing. If you're sitting outside and you touch a blade of grass that's got its feet in the earth, you're connected. You are getting that energy. What doesn't count is, let's say you're in somebody's garden patio where it's just potted plants that the pots are sitting on the cement or on a deck, that dirt is not connected to the electromagnetic energy of the earth. It really has to be in the earth itself, not in like a potted plant. Okay. So, but it does mean that you could sit out somewhere. Somebody could sit comfortably. They don't have to sit on the ground. They could sit on a bench. They can sit in a lawn chair. And if they can reach out and touch a plant, then they are earthing. An interesting thing to think about, if we think about how electricity travels, and the whole thing of like, you don't want to be swimming in a swimming pool if there's an electrical storm, because that water will conduct the electricity, right? That water aspect is great for us in the electricity that comes from the earth. So actually, nice, moist plants will conduct a lot more of that energy than touching the bark, the dry bark on a tree, right? You'll get some of it, but if you actually hold a leaf in your hands from that tree, it's the moisture allows that energy to conduct a little bit more. So those are all pieces as you think about the sit spot and how people can be earthing. And in that sit spot, we want them to be there for like 20 minutes, okay? Because that's the ultimate, or the minimum, I'll say, amount of time to get a benefit from earthing. Whatever kind of invitation or practice you create for them in this earthing session, you might actually have them journal about it, right? Which gives them a little more time to sit there. Or again, do a circle sharing in a way that they're still connected to the earth, that they're still getting that energy from the earth. You might also then have a little bit of an integrating, I call it integrating the experience with nature, but it's that piece at the end now, after they've done their earthing experience, to think about how they want to give back to nature, right? And maybe you're going to have a little bit of a ceremony. Maybe this is where you invite everybody to grab their water bottle, give thanks to the water, program the water with intention, drink that water, and then maybe offer some of that water out to a tree or a shrub or something that they connected with their time there, right? It's a way to actually right now in this moment give back. And this aspect of refreshments, right? We can think about having a ceremony around it. And the ceremony doesn't have to be complicated like a Japanese tea ceremony or a British high tea, right? The ceremonial piece is the fact that we are honoring that everything we're taking into us came from nature. So maybe you have some trail mix with some nuts and some fruits in it, or it can be as simple as just the water that people have. Or you could have made a tea or an iced tea that you have in a thermos and that you share a little bit of that with everybody so that everybody can think about this plant grew in the sun and in the wind and in the earth, and I'm taking its energy into my body, right? This blueberry grew on a shrub that the deer walked past, and that the sun and the rain shone down on it and grew this blueberry for me to take all of the energy of the sun and the rain and the nutrients of the earth into my body, right? It's a way to really have people be conscious that everything that we consume was once a part of nature, and to be grateful back to nature for that. And as we end, people have their refreshments, and we're going to leave our place in nature. We want to create that threshold again, right? We want to either have them walk out through the same gate we came in, or if they're leaving through a different path, put down your ribbon or put down your walking stick and have them take a moment, think what they're grateful for, maybe even express it out loud, and step over that threshold. so that it creates that sense of completion. And you might think, well, now it's over. But here's the thing that I have found is that once people have really integrated with nature in this way, that they're kind of at a different wavelength than the rest of the human world at this moment, right? And we need a little bit of a moment where people kind of integrate back into the speed and the way that we work as human beings. And it's a safety issue, right? You know, we don't want people just hopping in their car while they're in this kind of zone and not really being ready to drive. So just taking a few minutes to have them relax and chat a little bit. It's a great time now to talk to them about some of the things they can do when they get home, right? Share an ecological practice. Or it might be that reminder of, when you get home from a forest therapy practice, you just want to make sure that you take all your clothes that you've worn out in the woods and you put them in the laundry, and you want to just check yourself for ticks, right? It's not to end it on a down note, but it's just to bring them back to the realities of living in our world and being safe. So those are the steps for an inner harmony forest therapy practice. This week, you will have those 2 worksheets that you can download. The first one is when you take that guided journey in your own forest location with me leading you. This worksheet that you're going to download for that gives you that opportunity to take those notes that I've talked about, right? Like, what was it like to connect with your childhood tree? What did you notice when you were conscious walking? The second worksheet is to help you design your first own forest therapy session that's going to have this structure, that's going to have these components, so that you can kind of note that down. You can take that with you as your check sheet when you go out, so that you remember what you plan to do, and help you go through these magical processes. I am looking forward to our next session so that I can hear what happens on all this. I'll be looking forward to your homework assignments. And again, make sure that you hop in there on the Facebook group. I'll be watching it. If you have any questions, I will be glad to answer them. And I love seeing everything that you post and you share there. All right. See you soon. Everybody who's here in person, hang on.